So I watched Obsession, and I don't think I have much to say on it that hasn't already been said. Like, Obsession's good. I liked how everything feeds back into the central idea that Bear doesn't clearly see Nikki as a person. The shadows obscure her face, she dresses in such a way that's very out of character for her, he ignores all of her behavior, all these things to excuse and keep the fantasy intact. If you have feeds like mine, everyone's already pointed out to you the fact that Nikki wants to write a love story and Bear wants a romance. You've had the "what's so bad about being with me" line pointed out. You've heard the collective internet groan when he calls the help service and asks not to delete the wish, but to find a way to alter it to make it what he wanted. And I do absolutely adore that even when he's begging Ian to reverse the wish, he doesn't even ask for him to go wish that my wish never happened. He wants to carefully phrase it to maintain his relationship with Nikki, because even in this circumstance, he doesn't want to let her go. So he wants her to still love him as a friend. I don't know who is genuinely arguing that Bear is a completely blameless victim in this scenario, but if those straw men do actually exist, raise your hands and argue with the wall. And of course, you've also heard about the Hansel and Gretel fanfic. I actually really like the Hansel and Gretel fanfic choice, and not because it's like incest that Nikki saw him as a brother and that's the payoff. I find it way more interesting that the thing wearing Nikki's face also uses her writerly talent to make descriptive prose, and uses it again when she threatens to cut her own arm if Bear leaves the house. It feels like this thing is stealing pieces of Nikki to use against her, and it's deliciously horrifying to me. I also like that Ian actually did get $1 billion and was fine. When I first watched that scene, I thought he would be buried in money, but no. If he just stayed home at the climax, the man would be a true self-made billionaire. I like that it's explicitly shown to you that the One Wish Willow doesn't twist around wishes to be inhumane like a monkey's paw. It's just a general idea of what Bear wished for in itself that was inhumane. That's pretty cool. I've seen some people talk about Bear's deceased grandmother's house and possible theories for some stuff going on with him under the surface. Like, no, actually, how does a cat get into a pill bottle unless you've already had it open and lying around? But I actually don't care to examine that part too much, not because I don't think there's a deeper answer, but whatever flavor of lore we have for the problems that Bear is going through, the particularities to why he feels so lethargic in life are less interesting to me, because at the end of the day, whatever his reasons, the end result is the same. Nikki suffers for it. Diving into the specifics of Bear is more interesting flavor, but not really the point to me. To me, the thing I latched onto with Obsession was how it highlights how vulnerable a relationship is, and how unready Bear was to actually have one. Like, Nikki's creepiest moments before the Sarah, Carr, and self-harm scenes are moments where she is acting erratically in Bear's spaces, in his car, in his house, in his room. Nikki watching him sleep, to me, highlighted this moment of realizing how much trust you actually have to put in your partner to close your eyes at night, with the assurance that they're not going to get up to anything while you're just lying there. Bear, even before Nikki changed, didn't have that kind of trust in her. He thinks that confessing runs the risk of him losing her. Things can get awkward, dynamics will change, friendships won't always survive that confession, but it is possible. But the fact that Nikki asks him point blank, both possessed and not possessed, and Bear cannot summon the words, is understandable for a guy who doesn't really have a mature sense of who Nikki is, but also signals that he's not ready to be emotionally honest with Nikki. He wants the reward without putting in any of the risk. Like, I'm using the language of rewards and risk because that's what it feels like. If he doesn't ask too many questions, he can kind of worm his way into a relationship with her. The point of confessing is letting someone know in your life what's going on with you and how you see them. If you catch feelings, confessing is to give the other person the ability to accept that, process that, and change the relationship dynamic to how they see fit with that information in mind. Like, I can't speak for everyone, but the thing that's really disheartening about a friend catching feelings and then confessing to you is this underlying fear that, oh, were they just here to see if they could tag along for a relationship if they waited long enough? Versus if somebody's just like, I have these things, I'm dealing with that, but we can figure out if we want to still be friends after that. It's a different energy. But even before that, I think about the scene where Nikki calls to invite Bear out to trivia, and Bear lies about what he's doing because he doesn't want to tell Nikki that he's mourning his cat, but he will tell Sarah. And it's the little moments like that, or Bear fleeing to talk to Ian about his weird night with Nikki when she was acting erratically that first time, where I realize that Bear is physically incapable of having a candid, honest conversation with Nikki, but is fine with doing that for everyone else. Like, you have him hilariously rehearsing you can't cook the cat in the car. But I can even go back to when Nikki gives him the excuse that she took Molly and that's why she's acting erratically because her father is dying. And I can see how Bear doesn't even investigate or question that too much deeper. That night that they first get together would have been really disrupted if he just kind of went, hey, you are so emotionally distressed that you got to the point that you took a substance when you went out with us, didn't tell any of us about that, are quote unquote back on Molly, which means that you wanted to get off of it, and now you're showing up very differently dressed than what you're usually up to and very much flirting with me, and it feels like I should not be the focus of this moment, Nikki. Hearts and exclamation points and all that. Bear moves on because it avoids confrontation and it also gets him what he wants. I also like in that same vein of vulnerability that Nikki is also left in the dust by the friend group. You have the self-harm at the party scene and everyone defaults to Bear, the boyfriend, to take her to the hospital because that's his responsibility, which I have no idea what was said in that zoomed out hospital conversation, but I have a really hard time believing that an ER nurse would see a young girl who looks like Nikki with severe facial cuts dancing in the street and wave her off because she's acting too crazy. But I digress. And second, that same friend group starts doing everything they can to more or less vilify Nikki. Ian and Sarah have one-on-ones with Bear discouraging the relationship for their own personal reasons. But if they so much as attempted any kind of upfront confrontation with Nikki, a phone call, a text, a knock at her door, I missed it. I don't think it's present, but I could be wrong about that. Like, Ian finds out that Nikki's dad is not sick, and his first instinct is not to call Nikki and go, hey, what's going on? Why did you lie to me? It's to call Bear to rat Nikki out. While Ian floats the idea of Bear taking advantage of Nikki, he doesn't really do anything about that sentiment. Ian's whole mindset is that Nikki is with Bear to play mind games with Ian. And Sarah's just jealous there's not too many more candles you can add to the pity party cake. There's just something about how socially isolated Nikki is once she becomes a unit with Bear, and how Bear is literally the only one in a position to address her problems, that is a similar but different kind of terrifying as her creeping around in the shadows at night. Who you choose to make your partner is who you choose to support you, who you will trust to maintain your well-being and not cross any boundaries for their own selfish desires. When that's violated, you have no trust, and hey, look at that, without trust you can't have a relationship. I swear a therapist has said that at least 10 times somewhere in your life. So yeah, that was a neat little additional angle to think about in the middle of all this mess. Also, whoever did the costuming and car effects, I hope you get a lot of work in a lot of places and are paid very well in the future because oh my god.